Hi everyone. We are going to read Roswell, No Good Deed. We have to reread chapter 7 because unfortunately Instagram did boot us that last time when we were reading chapter 7. So for those of you who were with us, you'll get to hear it again. For those of you who are not, you get to hear it for the first time. So Michelle, it is your turn to read chapter 7.
All right, here we go. Chapter 7. March 24th, Scottsdale, Arizona. Michael's head still ached, but not as badly as before. His mouth tasted of cotton and stale socks. His entire body hurt in so many places that he couldn't separate them except for the crick in his neck. He recognized that. It occurred whenever he fell asleep sitting up. He brought his head up and opened his eyes. He did not expect what he saw, a very pink room filled with stuffed animals and dolls. He glanced around, moving his head slowly to ease the pain. A white toy chest covered with Barbie decals sat beneath a window with its frilly pink curtains drawn. Light was coming through those curtains, making the room look like the inside of a Pepto-Bismol bottle. Michael blinked, letting his eyes focus. He was tied, his hands behind his back, his feet against chair legs. The ropes had been pulled so tight that his toes were falling asleep. He sat for just a moment, getting his bearings. He could get out of the ropes, but he wanted to figure out where he was first and why he was there. The room smelled of antiseptic and bubblegum. Raspy breathing, faint and uneven, came from the bed. As his eyes adjusted to the weird light, he saw a small figure on the bed, nearly lost beneath the pink comforter and lace canopy overhead. The little girl, her face so pale as to be almost colorless, her eyes sunken deep into her head, her thin hands skeletal against the pillow. Michael felt his heart lurch. He didn't like this at all. A computer sat on a tiny white table near the other window. Child-sized chairs were pulled up beneath it. Next to the computer was something that looked like a walkie-talkie but had the image of a baby on it. Another walkie-talkie contraption sat on the end of the table beside the bed, next to a pink lamp with a ballerina for its base. A man sat on a rocking chair near the bed. He was clutching a picture book between his large hands, but he wasn't reading it. Instead, he was staring at the little girl. The man wasn't tied up. He didn't seem to be imprisoned. In fact, the door to the bedroom was open, and through it, Michael could see sunlight falling across the hallway carpet. Far away, a phone rang 4 times, so faint he could barely hear it. Obviously, the man didn't even notice because he didn't move. That little girl didn't seem to be able to move either. Michael glanced at the windows, 2 of them at angles to each other, a corner room with good lighting. There was a door near one of the windows, but it was partially open, revealing impossibly tiny clothes and shoes hanging inside. The only door into the room was behind the man in the rocking chair. Michael tugged on the ropes. If he eased them off his wrists, then got him off his feet without attracting attention, he'd still have to figure out which way was out and which was best, the windows or the door. He didn't like either option. He felt someone looking at him. He turned toward the bed, and the man was staring at him. The man was younger than he'd seemed from the side, maybe 10 years older than Michael, but his mouth was lined, and he had bags under his eyes. "Sorry about hitting you," the man said. "What?" Michael said. This guy was apologizing for kidnapping him? "And I'm sorry about drugging you too, but I couldn't guarantee that you'd come with me." "You could have tried asking," Michael said, fury rising up within him. He hadn't really been angry until now. Dazed, yes, but not angry. He hadn't known what was going on. "I suppose," the guy said, "but it probably would have sounded crazy to you." "Maybe," Michael said, "but I doubt I would have preferred getting hit on the head. That hurt, you know." "Shh," the man said, putting a finger to his lips. "Please don't wake Katie. She's having a tough enough time of it as it is." "What's wrong with her?" Michael asked, and then wished he hadn't. He didn't want to know. He didn't want to be involved with this crazy man or his schemes. It was time to break off the bonds and hurry out the door. But he didn't. Not yet. This was just too weird. "They don't know," the guy was saying. "That's why I had to find you." The sentence made Michael's stomach clench. He closed his eyes. "I'm so pissed about what happened last night," he had said to Max the day after they'd driven to Phoenix. Max had sighed and looked at his family's Christmas tree. The house had been festive, just like it always was, like Michael's house, be it the trailer or his apartment, had never been. "Michael," Max had said, "I couldn't stop myself." "No, no, no," Michael had said, not quite looking Max in the face. I'm pissed that I don't have the ability to help the kids in the hospital that you couldn't get to. And now he was facing one. He just knew it. Him, not Maxwell. Michael, the guy without the right skills. It always came down to that. He made himself open his eyes. Find me for what? The guy shook his head. It seemed so clear the other day, before I got the email. Oh, great, this guy really was crazy. What seemed clear? I saw you in the hospital the night the children got saved. You missed Katie. She was in intensive care. The guy put his hand on Katie's bed, not quite touching her. Intensive care. Michael's mouth went dry. He stared at the bed and the young girl barely visible there. She was so sick, she was probably going to die. She'd been that sick since Christmas, and they'd missed her. They hadn't been able to help her because they didn't even know she was there. I don't know what you think I can do, Michael said, sounding as defensive as he felt. The man put his hands through his hair. I wanted you to show me how you healed the others. Did you use a serum or a pill, or was it something else? Did you have help? I know you knocked on that door warning someone. What was that person doing? Was it the serum? Serum, Michael asked. What serum? The guy stood, shoving his hands into his back pockets. His restlessness made Michael restless as well. The serum I just paid $15,000 for. The stuff they said healed the kids. Michael stiffened. Who says? The website. What website? The one about the serum. They were getting nowhere, and it sounded like someone was trying to take credit for Max's actions. Tell me about it, Michael said. He wasn't going to leave until he knew exactly what was going on. I saw you, the guy said. He was close to the chair now. He wasn't that tall or that big. Even without his powers, Michael could take him. At the hospital in the hallway, I'd come out of Katie's room, and I saw you standing there. I saw the nurse bring the cops, saw you warn who was ever inside, and then I saw the kids. I know you're not an angel. I know you did something. You and the people who helped you. I want to know what it is. The guy wasn't very focused. I want to know about the serum, Michael said. I'm a dot-com millionaire, the guy said, almost to himself. I sold all my stock when my wife got sick. Who knew that I'd be one of the few guys who'd make a profit in the market? The serum, Michael said. I was getting to that. The guy paced. He stopped near one of the windows but didn't pull the curtain open. Instead, he just stood with his back to Michael. I have the time, you see. I could sit with Katie when she got ill, and I could try to figure out what happened in that room. The kids, they got better, really better. None of them relapsed. Of course not, Michael thought. Max had absorbed all the sickness and thrown it away. He'd been sick himself afterward, sick without any of his powers for days. So I knew whatever happened was real. No one took credit for it, which I thought was strange. Then the police released your sketch. Michael started. Great. There was a sketch of him somewhere. But, the guy continued, no one recognized you, and the police never said that the sketch was tied to the healings. Didn't want to mess with the Christmas miracle, I guess. Michael stayed very still. He didn't want to break the guy's train of thought. The kids kept insisting they saw an angel, but I knew you were real, and there was other evidence, like that open window and the footprints on the ground outside. The nurse had seen you, and she had said there was someone else with you. She wasn't really sure how many people were in the room that night. She was convinced that a miracle had happened. But people don't make miracles. They make medicine or try experimental treatments. Miracles don't happen. Yes, they do, Michael wanted to say. You should just see my friend Max. But he stayed silent. The guy bowed his head. So I tried to trace you. First, I talked to all the parents of all the kids. Katie was still in the hospital then, so I managed a trip to Roswell. I saw you flipping burgers at in that diner. The crash down, Michael said, figuring that wouldn't give him away. Yeah, the guy said, and I was stunned. I figured if you had the ability to save kids, you wouldn't be flipping burgers. Brilliant deduction, Sherlock. Michael literally bit his tongue, trying to keep from saying everything he was thinking. The pain kept him alert. So I just figured you were helping somebody. You know, maybe you were the driver or the lookout. Michael shook his head. The guy still had his back to him, though, and couldn't see it. I followed you home, but I wasn't ready then. Ready for what? Michael asked. I didn't know how I'd use you. Michael let out an exasperated sigh. Use me for what? To save Katie. The guy turned. His voice had risen slightly and his cheeks were flushed. Michael could feel his desperation. What does this have to do with some serum? Michael asked, trying to keep the guy focused. He'd find out about this serum and then he'd leave. I came back here. I didn't dare be away from Katie much longer. And where's here? Michael asked with a sinking feeling. He had a hunch he knew. Scottsdale. Right outside of Phoenix. 7+ hours from Roswell, just like Michael had expected. No wonder the guy had drugged him out cold. And in the trunk of a car like a piece of luggage. The anger that Michael had been holding back rose again. He clenched his teeth, trying to stay calm for just a moment or two longer. When you came back, what did you do? Michael asked. I was searching the web for medical information. They thought Katie had some super virus at the time, and I was afraid they were right. So I was looking up everything about it. Then I saw the website. The website? That's right. Keep him talking. Yeah, the guy said it talked about the serum and how your friends had tried to get the FDA approval, but it hadn't worked because the FDA is in league with the major drug companies, and all those companies don't want it on an all-purpose drug like that on the market because it'll cut into their profits. You believed that crap? No, not really. The guy hunched his shoulders forward. But Katie's so sick, I can't afford to ignore things. So I read the site, and it talked about how they went to the hospital in Phoenix at Christmas and used the medication on the children there to prove that it worked. Still, the FDA had not denied them. I can't believe this, Michael said. The guy stopped and swallowed so hard that his Adam's apple bobbed. Michael clenched his fist behind his back. He had to stay calm. He had to. Otherwise, he wouldn't find out what this guy knew. You don't know about them, do you? The guy asked quietly. What else did the website say? Michael asked. The guy licked his lips. He glanced at Katie on the bed, then back at Michael. It said that because they couldn't get government approval, they decided to give the stuff away themselves with a slight donation. It's not entirely legal, so there's a bunch of hoops to go through. How much did that hoop cost you? Michael asked. $15,000 cash. Come on, Michael said. Even I know better than to send up cash to someone with nothing more than a website and a stupid story. He could almost imagine what Maria would say about the whole thing after she stopped laughing in that way of hers. Maybe you do, the guy said softly, but you don't have a daughter with a disease that no one understands. You haven't run out of options yet. I can afford to lose $15,000 on a gamble like this. So where's the stuff? I have to pick it up today. And what did you kidnap me for? The guy looked at him. I thought that they weren't going to answer me. I'd sent the money and I hadn't heard back from them. So I decided I'd get you. You could tell me where they were, and if they weren't the guys, you could tell me who was. You know what happened in that room. Yes, he did, and he wasn't about to tell this man. Although he wished Max were here. If Max were here, they could save this poor little girl and figure out how to deal with her weird father together. At that moment, the little girl moaned. The man turned so fast that Michael thought he was going to fall over. He sat on the edge of Katie's bed and took her hand. How are you feeling, sweetheart? He asked. Thirsty. Katie's voice was raspy and tired as her breathing. I'll go get you some ice, the man said. I want Kool-Aid, Daddy. Ice first, the man said. The doctor said it was easier for you to swallow. He left the room almost at a sprint. The little girl leaned against the pillow and closed her eyes. She hadn't even noticed Michael. Michael stared at her for a long time. He'd seen how those kids looked in the hospital ward before Max had touched them, and how they looked after. She looked worse than the kids had that night. This wasn't fair. None of it was fair. No wonder Max hadn't stopped that night. Michael would get up and help her if he could, if he had the power. He could hear rattling in the kitchen. This was his chance. He could get away now. The little girl moaned again, and Michael wondered if she was in pain. So someone was claiming that a serum had healed those kids. Someone was running a scam on all that Max had done. Michael's anger grew. Who knew what that $15,000 serum really did to sick kids like poor little Katie here? Maybe it was harmless, but maybe it killed the kids. Maybe it just made them sicker. He wasn't going to leave until he knew where this guy was going to go to pick up the serum. Michael would stop those crooks from making a buck off of Max's kindness, off those little kids' lives. And then he would find Max. Max could help Katie. So maybe the guy's crazy gamble was paying off. Michael was going to do what the guy wanted him to do, but not for the reasons the guy thought. Because Michael couldn't stand the way that poor little girl looked, so lost on her own bed. He couldn't stand to hear her labored breathing and see her pale face. He knew, just like he had known at Christmas, that she was only one of many, but she was the one before him. And like Max, Michael had to help, no matter what.
Okay, that was chapter 7.